Hi, my name is Sydney Weiss. I am a student from Walter T. Bound's AP English and Language Composition class, and today I am presenting on A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. This presentation will consist of a summary, as well as a quick characterization of the main characters, a thesis, which will be discussing the imperative nature of race on the story, and then themes to back up the thesis, most importantly race, family, dreams, and then lastly we will discuss its modern relevance. A Raisin in the Sun takes place in the 1950s over the course of a few weeks. The main characters is the Youngers, an African-American family in Southside Chicago. At the start of the play, the family is about to receive a $10,000 insurance check, a life insurance check from the deceased Mr. Younger. And the main conflict of the play is that the family has different ideas on how to use this money. For example, Mama wants to buy a home that her and her dead husband shared a dream of. Her son, Walter Lee, wants to invest in a liquor store with his friends, while his wife, Ruth, agrees with his mother. Beneatha, Mama's youngest child, wants to use the money for her medical school tuition. And for the rest of the play, we get to see the ripple effects of this insurance check and what it does to their family and how money and their dreams kind of separates them, but then brings them back together. Now we move into the characterizations. So first we have Walter Lee, who is both the protagonist and the antagonist of the story, which you can kind of say about all the characters, but it mainly applies to him. He is Mama's son, Beneatha's brother, and Ruth's husband, as well as Travis's father. And he has dreams of becoming rich. It causes him to make many mistakes on behalf of his family, thinking that what he's doing and putting his dream first is more important than the rest of his family and what they think. And he is very argumentative and wants to help his family, but doesn't actually listen to what they want and see what they need. Mama is the head of the Younger household, and she is sensitive and demands her family respect and take pride in their dreams, but she's also very Christian and rejects her daughter Beneatha's more radical views on Christianity and God. And the money itself isn't important to Mama. What is more important is the dreams that can be reached with it, and her dream is to have a family home like her and her husband always wanted, something that will unite the family and bring them together. And she acts as a character foil of mainly Walter Lee and a little bit of Beneatha. Beneatha is Mama's youngest child. She is a college student and is very independent and feminist. And unlike really any of the rest of her family, she is interested in rediscovering her African roots. She has two boyfriends / love interests that are both African American in the story. She first has Asage, who is similar to Beneatha in that he also has an interest in his African heritage, and she is happiest when she is with Asage because obviously they both connect on the level of being African American and living in America. And then she also has George, who is whitewashed, you could say, like her family, very much into moving away from his African roots in a country that at the time wasn't really accepting of them. And by the end of the play, she gains a lot more perspective on her opinions. Ruth is Walter Lee's wife, and the two have marriage problems, which she hopes to fix. She is Travis's mom and is a strong female character. Her pessimism is what keeps her emotionally available and ready to fight both for her dreams, her family's dreams, and for her right as a Black woman in American society. Travis is Walter and Ruth's son, and he kind of acts as a grounding character in the sense that the family also wants to do its best for him as well, despite all their own individual dreams and aspirations. Then we have Mr. Carl Lindner, who is a main antagonist of this story. He is the only white character, at least that we see, and he is a member of the Clybourne Park Improvement Association, which he, as well as the members of that association, are very much racist, and his role in this play is to offer a deal to keep the Youngers out of his all-white community. He's like the personification of the point that this play um, wouldn't have the same story if the family was white, because he is, again, he's the personification of a black man and women's struggle in America. While he's not out, killing these people or saying technically very abrupt and blunt hateful speech, you can tell that he's just also a generalization of the average American at the time, average white American, where they can be like, oh, we're not racist, but they do not want black people to integrate into society. Then there is Joseph Asage, who is known in the play as just Asage. He is a Nigerian descent African American. He is, as I mentioned before, one of the love interests of Beneatha, and he is someone who makes Beneatha the most happy because he also has a deep-rooted goal and aspiration to, dive more into his African roots. He provides an international perspective on the world and the issues that lie in this play. He wants to move to Nigeria and proposes to Beneatha, hoping that she will go back to Nigeria or just Africa in general with him. This presentation's thesis is A Raisin in the Sun's plot and characters would display an entirely different story had the younger family, i.e. the characters as previously mentioned, been white. Now we will dive into the themes and how they back up this thesis. Obviously, race, which although may not appear as the main theme and lesson and story in this play, is, to me at least, most important. And then we of course have the two obvious ones, those being family and dreams. So racial discrimination is obviously a factor in the story. For example, the character Mr. Lindner. He, again, is a member of the Clybourne Park Improvement Association, which is a governing body of the Youngers' new all-white neighborhood, and they send Mr. Lindner to persuade the Youngers to not move into the neighborhood because these people, i.e. the association, and just white people in general, especially at that time, can only see the color of the Youngers' skin. There is just no way, no matter how nice they are, no matter what things they say, they will only see the color of their skin. And so they bribe the Youngers into staying out of the neighborhood, and that threatens to tear apart the family and their values. So the Youngers respond defiantly, both intentionally and just in their nature. Humans' response to such things is to, in a way, fight back. So the play's lesson is to stand up to discrimination, have dignity, and do not allow it being, racism to go unchecked. And you can see, while the play's main storyline revolves around family and dreams, you can see there are certain aspects of this play that would just not happen or not happen in a certain way had the family been white. There would be no Mr. Lindner going and being like, you can't move into this neighborhood. And, Beneatha wouldn't be so in touch and want to dive into her African roots, obviously if she was white. But then there's also, she does that because she lives in a society where they continue to push upon her that she is not part of their society, but also she has to ingrain herself into their values. So while her family kind of goes around playing their part in this all-white society, despite being a different skin color, you can even see it in the character's name, like Walter Lee. Walter sounds like it would be the name for a white man. And Beneatha's name, it's not a usual name you would hear around, but also the basis of her name is beneath, as in black people are beneath. Now that may have been not intentional, but it probably very well was, and you can see those little pieces of the puzzle coming together and showing you that this family's dreams and values is very much the way they are because of their race, which it had to be because that is what white people have placed upon people of color for centuries, at least, or not at least, just worldwide. Now we have family, which is kind of the main plot of the play in the sense that it both ties together its main aspect of race and dreams and puts them together into a familial setting. So the Youngers obviously struggle economically, but it's also more than that because there's this idea behind it that, love also being family isn't enough. You can love people as much as you want, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have a good, happy life together or on your own. This idea is obviously disproven by the end of the play because they come to realize that after Walter has to deal and cope with, the loss of the stolen insurance money, or at least it's part of it that he put into his opening of a liquor store, and then Beneatha begins denying Walter as a brother because of his blatant disregard for anyone else's thoughts on the matter. But eventually, the family unite to reject Mr. Lindner's racist actions. See, what keeps them together is the racial aspect of the story. And they all realize their dream of buying a house, which was the dream that Mama had from the beginning. So you can see that family is very much tied to Mama's character in that she strongly believes in its importance and attempts to teach these values to her family, but also struggling to keep them together during a time of racial disadvantage as well as economic. And so you can see from the beginning of the play, they are strong individuals in the sense that they are really opposed to being a collective whole. But by the end, they are also individuals, but pieces of a whole unit, and that unit being family. And lastly, we have dreams, which you can say that essentially at its core, the play is also about dreams. But race obviously plays a role in those dreams because the main characters, who represent an entire community as a whole, struggle to deal with their oppression in their lives. And it can be said that these dreams and these difficulties of reaching them would not necessarily be anything that people that are white would have to deal with. Their dreams are almost birthed from their oppressive society, you could say, because, Beneatha wants to become a doctor. And, she has to struggle with both the money aspect of it, but also being a black female doctor, which is something that was, basically ludicrous at the time. Yet dreams are, ingrained into this play. For example, the title is a reference to Langston Hughes's poem that is about dreams that had been forgotten or put off, which you could say that the Youngers have been going through because almost interchangeably, you could say forgotten as in they had to forget them because it wasn't reasonable with their economic and racial factors in their life, or put off because, again, they did not have the economic standpoint to reach those dreams. So, examples of the Youngers family's dreams, two of them are Beneatha, obviously, as I said before, wants to be a doctor, but Walter, he wanted to be able to afford things for his family, which is something that he struggles with the entire play. And so when there's happiness and depression in the family's life, it is related to their failure or their, attainment of their dreams. By the end of the play, the resolution is that they come together and they get their dream house, what Mama and Mr. Younger, their dead husband, father, grandfather wanted. And this unites the family, which they already were on their way to unity after struggling to deal with Mr. Lindner and the association's racial prejudices against the family. But to tie this back to the thesis, I beg the questions of how do the Youngers reach their dreams as an African American family in the 1950s? Because that wasn't a time when Black people had to fight for the simple rights that all humans are supposed to be able to have in both the world and in American society. And would those family and individual dreams as well, would they be as hard to reach had the Youngers been a white family? Many people, mostly white people, would like to believe it wouldn't be, but the truth of the matter is, especially at that time, it 100% would be. It's truly fascinating that this play and unit that we are on in English class has come about during the recent Black Lives Matter upsurge and, outrage against governmental and, institutions in this country. So racism's role in American social and legal systems, in a way, also has an effect on the story. As I said before, like, what if a Black man came to a white family's home and bargained with them not to move into the former's all-Black neighborhood? That's preposterous. But if it, happened the way it did in this play, the story of Raisin in the Sun, at the time, that wasn't very far-fetched. That wasn't something that would spark outrage, because that was what was normal. Racism was normal in society. And the relevance it has to today is that there are people that are using these reverse scenarios to invalidate the struggles of, the Black community in this country. And so these dreams that this family has can be argued that they are more on the level of that of a regular, I guess you could say, white person's dreams, because being a doctor, owning a store, and having that success, having a large home, is not something that many white people in the country could wrap their head around at the time. So when you reverse the situation, is that unreasonable, but not the opposite? That is what this play brings into question, in my opinion. It's unfortunate to say that equality between races has been apparent in society, especially that of American society, for decades. And many, mainly white people, want to believe that, or do believe that, because they don't understand the concept of internalized racism or just full-blown, racism. And so it's just inherently false to say that even now we were equal, because you can't even argue in the 1950s that we were. There was a whole movement that was validated by the government based on, legislature. So would it slide in the 1950s for a Black female doctor to treat a white person? No, it wouldn't. And even now, some people unfortunately do get uncomfortable, even now, when let alone a Black female, treats a patient. Mainly men think that way, though. And so if the Youngers were white, these struggles they have with classism, it would probably be significantly easier as a white family. And family togetherness in America is different for white people, because of course family is important to everyone. The Black community have to stick together because they want to, because they're family. But they also have to because they're living in a world that constantly and to this day degrades them and puts them down, as much as it argues that it doesn't. Hence why this play has modern relevance and upholds the thesis that, the story would be different had it been a white family as the protagonists / antagonists or main characters. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on A Raisin in the Sun.